Okay, part of the music theory assignment here on lesson 6 covers pages 49 to 51 in Mandolin Masterclass. And when you read through that, Brad introduces us to a lot of different types of chords. Need to be familiar with this material, of course, but you don't necessarily need to fully understand and implement all of this right away, but you definitely need to be familiar with it. He talks about seventh chords. He talks about sixth chords, ninth chords. He talks about augmented chords and suspended chords, and he talks about the diminished chords. So we're going to briefly cover some of this with our arpeggios to kind of help you to visualize some of this. The most important thing is the seventh chords, and I'm not going to get much into showing you a bunch of seventh chords. I know that I've taken up too much time in these videos and rambling way too much, and I apologize for that. But I don't want to lengthen this out anymore. I've been working on developing this lesson for over a week, off and on, and I'm just ready to put it to bed. So we're just going to quickly discuss some of this stuff with arpeggios on, understanding the concepts behind the seventh chords and the sixth chords. And then we're going to wait until next week to really talk about the diminished chords. Whenever we get to the numbering system, we'll talk a little, I say next week, but what I mean is in our next lesson, when we get into the Nashville numbering system and talk about the numbering system that Brad gets into in the next section of the book. We'll talk about diminished chords a little bit at that time, because we're going to bring in the topic of diatonic harmony when we talk about the numbering system. So for now, let's just look at our arpeggios and talk about the major seventh, dominant seventh, and sixth chord figures. If I was going to play, sometimes I'll play seventh chords with this sort of a guitar D7 shape. Works very good on the mandolin. Well, you have that one, and then down here you've got this one that looks like a guitar D7. This would be a G7 chord. You got your G here, and we normally play it with this octave G here. And that gives us the octave and the third. And then we've got the another octave. We've got the root. I should call them roots, because ones and octaves can be confusing. That depends on where you start. So we started up here at this G, well then this would be the octave. But then if we start at this G, then this would be the octave. These are all root notes. They're all the G note. So let me just back up and say, here is a G chord. You're familiar with this one, which is a bluegrass type, often used in chopping. And you can let off that little finger, play this G up here, or you can just leave this finger off and play this. So you got the first, the fifth, the third, and then you got the root again. You make that chord like this, you've got another G here. So you've got a root, a third, and a root. Now because this is a root, you can consider this the octave of this or whatever. You could consider this either the 1 or the 8, because the root can be numbered either 1 or 8. And if you consider this an 8, you move down here, you got a major 7th. Move down 1 fret, you got a major 7th. Move down 2 frets and you got the dominant 7th, which the dominant 7th consists of the 1, 3, 5 and the flatted 7th. That's an important chord. So it's a passing chord often. If you go from G. Let's say we're going to go from the G to the C. We could go G, G7, G, G7, see, so it's often used in passing. That's an important chord to know, but I don't want to get too much into the showing you different ways to make seventh chords on the mandolin. There are a lot of ways to do it. We might get into that in another video, but for now I'm just going to ask you to look in a chord book, look online for chords, what have you, so you can learn the seventh chords when they come up in a song. If you're looking at a song online, it calls for a seventh chord. When a chord is written, for instance, G7, that's talking about a dominant seventh. It's got a flatted 7. If it's a major seventh, it'll be written as a G major 7. But when we say G7 or C7 or F7, we're always talking about the dominant seventh, because that is the important one that is used to create tension in a passing chord, and it's used in an awful lot of songs. Okay, enough about that. Let's study it by looking at arpeggios. We go to the arpeggio again, and we're going to use the C arpeggio, this shape right here, which is based on the chord shape. That gives us the 1, 3, 5, 8. There's our octave. Now if we lower this 8 a half a step, that's the 7th. That's the 7th note of the scale. That would be a B. So there's your major 7th. That's the major 7th. Because that uses the 7th note. Now if we drop that note and flatten the 7th note, that flatted 7th gives us the dominant 7th. There's our flatted 7th. And then if we drop that another half step, it gives us the 6th note of the scale, and that gives us our 6th chord. Now let's play all of those. The major 7th, the dominant 7th, and the 6th. You see, you'll hear that type of a progression in many songs. Probably not in many bluegrass songs, but in an awful lot of popular music you'll hear that type of progression. The dominant 7th, remember, is the most important. That one is used in really quite a few songs. Would be I use this one, which I use as an A7. I use that particular chord, and when I play Little Sadie. There's your D minor. Anyway, that should give you an idea about 7th chords. I've already talked too long, and so that's it. This is the end of lesson 6. If you have any questions, be sure and ask. I will be happy to make more videos or write explanations about anything you don't understand, or if you want me to expand on something that I may have mentioned in passing and didn't cover fully, I'll be glad to do that. Also, remember that Brad will answer your questions about anything that you see in Mandolin Masterclass materials if you just ask them in the thread there at the Woodshed Study Group. There's a thread there titled something like Hello to the Woodshedders, and if you look at that thread, that is a thread that Brad monitors, and you can ask him your questions right there. Thank you. Have a wonderful time. Peace, love, and mandolins. We're out.